Nonprofit and philanthropic leaders devote their lives to the service of others, but sometimes they need a little help. Kristine Michie has been deep in the work and the play of helping changemakers grow their impact for decades. So whether you're ladling soup at a local shelter or attending a UN peace conference, you need to find the balance between the heavy work and a light touch so you don't burn out. And Kristine believes play is at the center of that. Welcome to the PlayFull Podcast, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world.
Hey folks, Kristine here. We are treating you to what we're calling our YTD, year-to-date best of. There are 4 episodes. This is one of them that have been off the charts, the highest engagement that we've had in 2026. So sit down, enjoy these messages, these inspirations, and these conversations that are as relevant today as ever. And if you didn't hear them before, glad to share them with you now. Hey everyone, welcome. Welcome back to the PlayFull Podcast. We are bringing fun to the serious work of change in the world. And today's guest, Reginald Dwayne Betts, is a poet and lawyer. There's much more to say, but I want to start with that poet and lawyer because it's got some juicy like juxtaposition in it. Maybe it doesn't really, but I think in our linear minds it does. Like poet, lawyer, what? Tell us a little bit, Reginald, about being a poet and a lawyer and how those support each other and make each one richer.
I got to tell you first, juxtaposition is one of my favorite words.
Nice.
So we are off to a good start. And when I went to law school, a lot of people thought that the law was going to be radically different from poetry. I thought that I might believe that. But I think that both mediums, both disciplines, both practices are really about how do you use words to communicate. And the best of like judges, the best opinions, I mean, they read like literature.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Folks, Reginald, I sometimes I back into things because I just get so excited about something like we just started out with. And juxtaposition, also a favorite word of mine. The PlayFull Podcast has that juxtaposition, our tagline, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world. And eating ice cream while we talk about, ice raids, for example. I mean, that has happened on the podcast. How do we hold that duality? And your work, your creative work, your whole spirit seems to be an embrace of that, of duality. Welcome, and thank you for bringing that.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's a really lovely thing. I was excited about it because you know what, man, ice cream is the thing that you aren't supposed to say that you love in public. And also, right, it's this thing that when you think about serious podcasts, when you think about serious work in the world, it's a way in which sometimes your serious work gets distant from the things that bring you like joy. And you should get joy from your serious work. But do you? If you can't within that serious space get joy from these other things like ice cream.
Yeah. I've said this before. There was back in the 70s when Steve Martin was getting his start and had his kind of stand-up routine. And he also plays the banjo. He's a musician. And he would play the banjo and say, his statement was, you can't be in a bad mood if you or someone near you is playing the banjo. And he would try and he would play it and go, oh, pain and joy and sorrow. And he couldn't. And then he would burst out laughing. And it was kind of like ice cream. The banjo is this and ice cream is a kind of universal signal or a wink, right? That you can have some fun. And eating ice cream in the middle of the day is a little bit naughty too. So, that's kind of fun.
Oh man, are my kids gonna see this? They gonna gave us all kinds of permission now.
So Reginald, let me fill in, folks, a little bit more of Reginald's bio, and I'm gonna read what you sent because I don't want to miss anything important. Reginald Dwayne Betts is a poet and lawyer, as I mentioned. He is a 2021 MacArthur Fellow. I gotta tell you, Reginald, you're the second MacArthur Fellow we've had on, so that's super cool.
Oh, cool. Who was the other one?
Cecilia Munoz.
Oh, okay.
She worked for the Obama administration in both terms and ultimately was the chair of the Domestic Policy Council for Obama, put together his binder every night of what he had to work on the next day. And she was a MacArthur Fellow and an immigration rights activist, amongst other things. So great company. And then you're the executive director of Freedom Reads, which is a nonprofit organization that at its most simple, brings books into prisons, but it's done in a most masterful and beautiful way that I'd love you to talk about. And you're an author, and you had a book that came out this last spring called Doggerel. And you have a freedom edition, which I know you brought along today. I'll let you pick any one of those points to start with, as you share a little bit about yourself, your journey, and your gift to all of us.
I think I'll start with the Freedom Edition just because I have it right here, and it kind of connects. I think one of the things that I am happy about these days is I got a real sense that my life is, interwoven, and it was always these threads, but now the threads are kind of knotted together in a way that's beautiful, but some kind of beautiful macrame, right? And the Freedom Edition is part of that because I mean, it might even have been the start of that. I was publishing a book, I think it was Felon, and at that time I got reconnected to some of my guys in prison, and that reconnection led me to representing them because it was sort of like I had this skill or nascent skill. I was an attorney and they were doing life in prison. And so, first though, it started with books. They was like, "Yo, let me get," the book was Felon. Let me get Felon. And it was only coming out in hard copy. And I was like, man, they couldn't get that. So, and so then I was like, now, okay, I really can't do anything for you. So that's prompted me to start helping them with their cases. They asked me as well, but those things happen around the same time. But then I worked with W. Norton, and I said, can we create a freedom edition? An edition that's just for the people that's free, but that's made and produced for the people that's inside. It's going to be in paperback so that they don't have to wait until the paperback edition comes out. And
Nice.
Norton agreed to do that. And so we did it for Felon, and then we did it for this, for Doggerel.
Yeah.
And it's cool because, you get something like this. I got a letter in the front, and the letter, it talks about who I am and why we do this. And the letter talks about freedom reads. And so the letter, it talks about my sons. So the letter itself is a sort of weaving together and a stitching together all these aspects of my life.
Wow. Would you like to read any bit for us, any excerpt or snippet that are you inspired to do that right now? Does that feel good?
Yeah, let's do that. Um, Dear reader, when I left prison 20 years ago on March 4th, 2025, I planned on leaving it all behind. The cells, my memories are running mile after mile on a gravel track. That one alley-oop I tossed to Raw as he walked the ladder of air to the freedom of a slam dunk. All of you can imagine going inside as a barely breaking 100 pounds teenager and imagine what it means to be me, a lonely kid getting scraps of wisdom from men who would chop it up with me about everything from the philosophy of Franz Fanon to why Randall Cunningham turning a football field into a choreographed scene from an Alvin Ailey show is the most beautiful thing they witnessed. And I came home imagining that I would leave it all behind.
Mm.
What kind of fool am I? I know the names of the men I did time with: Fats, Juvie, Luke, Star, Jermaine, Divine, and too many more to list here. I have gone to 6900 Atmore Drive in Richmond, Virginia to argue before the parole board for their freedom. Over the years, I've sent a few pictures. I got lost in the years it took to finish community college, to graduate from the University of Maryland, and finally to become a lawyer with a degree from the Yale Law School. But what of it? In 2020, I founded Freedom Reads, an organization that builds freedom libraries and opens them on prison cell blocks. So far, we're in more than 15 states with more than 500 libraries and 50 prisons. Our mission to bring joy, hope, and possibility for the future into the lives of those in prison. Truth be told, this book you hold, Doggerel, is all about joy. And then I go on to say some more about the book.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doggerel is an epitaph, isn't that right?
Yeah, well, oh, yeah.
Is that what it, I mean, not
Yeah,
your
it
book,
is.
but that's what
Yeah,
the word means.
yeah.
Because it's not a very familiar word.
Yeah, it means it's like it means bad poetry.
It does?
Although interestingly enough, though, right? It means if you look at the front of the book, I have two definitions that I put in there. A verse comic, which is kind of appropriate for this
Yes,
podcast about play,
yes.
but so comic, burlesque, and usually composed in irregular rhymes. Also badly composed, expressed, trivial. And what's interesting, right, is that I mean, this is wild because you would think that we set this up on purpose. But what I was doing is I'm writing this book, and I understand that people think that that poetry is so high up here, and that's why people had this huge distance from it. And so when I was writing it, I said I'm gonna call it Doggerel because I knew I had all these dogs in it. But also, I'm somebody who takes myself really, really seriously, but not that seriously. So the title becomes a way of poking fun at this notion. And then also I push at how language is flexible because then I give my own definition for doggerel. So I say doggerel. Um, I have 1, 2, and 2 is so I cross out the first definition. And then for 2, it says, nah, just a black man writing poems about his dog and all the dogs he encounters on the street and how having an extra 4 feet changed his world. Then he falls in love.
Oh my God, that's so good. My book is on order. It's on its way to me as we speak, so I can't wait to get my hands on it and make.
No, you were supposed to wait for me to read a poem and then say, oh, that's so great. I'm ordering 3 books right now.
Well, I can order 3 more.
No, I'm talking about for the audience. I'm talking about for the audience.
Oh my God. So my the only familiar I had with the word doggerel is our in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is in that book, and it talks about how Bill Wilson, who's the guy who started AA, when he was in World War One, he was over in Europe somewhere, and he was walking through a cemetery, and he saw a doggerel, and he refers to it on this tombstone, and it was like a little poem, like
Yeah.
you're telling me, about this guy who died. And he talks about that he was a young, I think he was only like 20 or something when he was over there, and he talks later about it being a warning because it was a rhyming poem about the guy. He died like, I guess an alcoholic. And he
Mm.
talks later about that poem came back to him. He recalled that when he was a young guy, he'd seen this doggerel on this tombstone. So it's all making sense now because honestly, Dwayne, I thought it meant just epitaph, like something carved on a tombstone. No, it means like a poem, like a little rhyming something.
I thought she was saying epitaph, which is like a bad word. And so I was like, but yeah, so it's interesting because it shows how it functions in both ways.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so this is your 4th book, and I mean, it's a big deal, and you have a bunch of big deal things, and you're a humble guy with some big deal stuff, which is a cool juxtaposition also. But the New York Times reviewed Doggerel, which there's a lot of books that come out that don't ever get their attention. And I noticed one of the comments in that review from April of 2025 in the New York Times Book Review was talking about calm and joy meeting up with chaos. I think that was somewhere in the headline when they were talking about again another kind of that duality, right? Calm and joy, even mixed in with chaos. And it feels like that's super relevant right now. This is a hard time if you're kind of care about humanity, if you care about social justice, if you care about people who have needs that aren't being met and services that are being taken away. And how do we stay buoyant, right, and resilient in this time? How are you doing that? How are you keeping your spirits up? Or is that not that hard to do?
Um, it's interesting because I wrote the book and during the hardest, one of the hardest stretches of my life. And I was thinking about this Alcoholics Anonymous thing that you said. And it's crazy because, one of the things that happened is if I was drinking significantly more than I should ever drink in life on a regular basis, I stopped. And this was like 2023. And I had known, how much of my mind I was burying under alcohol. And it wasn't that I was functioning, but suddenly I started losing weight. You know what I mean? I lost like 10 pounds, 15 pounds. And I was like physically transforming into a new human being. But also I was super, super depressed at the time because I was like going through a divorce. Um, and then also life was happening. But then at the same time, at my organization, at my company, I mean, we were doing amazing work. And I was always living in a world of juxtaposition because my work was putting me in close company with people who I know where they've been and I know what they wanted to do. And then my life, my relationship was falling apart. First relationship, married my girlfriend. That I met this woman after I came home. We got in a relationship. We got married. We was married for 16 years. Fell apart. That's fine. Things happen, but it was devastating. Um, and I was falling in love, and all of these things were happening at once. And it's like, and falling in love makes all of the other stuff have a different context.
Mm.
But then I had already committed to this idea that I could write about something other than sorrow. So I was writing doggerel while all of those things were happening. And I feel like easily this is the most joyous poem collection of poems I've written. But it's not because they avoid sorrow. It's because that they recognize that sorrow is a part of a continuum of life and they touch along the other parts of the continuum of life. It touches on joy. And for me, what's interesting is that I called it doggerel because I think sometimes we think our joy is trivial. And I
Mm.
wanted to push back against that. I wanted to put joy in a really serious context and was hoping that somebody like the New York Times would review it because it would justify it. Like, do we think that, when I wrote about suffering, it got legitimated by the New York Times because they said it was a good book. I was like, well, I'm gonna believe the same thing will happen if I write poems that'll make people feel good, that I'm, written in the context of I want you to smile.
Wow. Yeah, I love to think about that. I'm excited to have people know about your work. This is your fourth book, so there's a bunch of, you've got a library of your own for folks to check out. Tell us about these freedom libraries and how can people support that work?
Um, I think it's my sixth book
Mhm.
because, and
Sorry,
it's funny.
thanks.
But the only reason why I say that is because the one that I'm the two that I'm most proud of outside of doggerel and the one that I would tell people about is redaction actually, because it's an art book. I did it with my friend Titus Gafar,
Ooh.
and it connects to this thing that we're talking about. And so I just make a brief aside, right?
Oh, yes, please.
So a friend of mine, Amy Lowe, and it all connects. And I just she told me that she had a colorectal cancer, and years before, a different friend had told me that they had breast cancer, and I was younger. I just didn't know what to do, and I think in my head I felt like I had disappointed that person. I just like wasn't a good friend. And so when Amy had told me that, I was like, I'm gonna write a poem for you
Mhm.
every time you go to chemo. And sometimes I just say stuff, and I say it, and then I got to follow through. And so in the writing those poems, I knew I couldn't write poems that were just filled with sorrow. I actually knew I had to write a poem that like had some kind of joy in it. And that was when I started writing the poems that would end up, I would put them in redaction. They would become that book, but then they would become, some of them are actually in doggerel, but they continue the theme that I started there, writing it. She had a dog, I had a dog. My friend Lori Gruen, she had a dog. When I got my dog, I used to always be talking to my friend Lori while walking the dog. And then Lori suggested I should write more about dogs because I've written a few poems for Amy about dogs. I wrote more and more and more. So it's all wrapped up, and particularly because it's wrapped up in how I've tried to integrate some of my ideas about who should have access to joy and how the work is
Mm,
constructed.
mm.
Because this book was also done with W.W. Norton, and it's a high, fancy, beautiful, um, built art book that I did with Titus Gafar, who also won a MacArthur. Um, we did it with a flex bound cover because hardbacks can't get into prison. And we wanted to make sure that people in prison had access to the beautiful artwork that he creates along with the poems that I wrote. And I've literally been in prison and read from this book. I mean, one time I was in prison, I read from like all five, at the time it was all five of my books, right? And the first four books, it was like, but then some of them, they would hear the poems and I felt like I was making people feel bad. And then I got the doggerel, and that doggerel, I got the redaction, and I showed them the images, and it was like, ooh. And then I started reading the poems, and it's like, yo, you could just feel the room light up, And I was at this prison called Comstock in upstate New York, and I mean, you could feel the room light up. And essentially, that's what Freedom Reads is. This belief that you can bring joy into a space through a built object. So like through the beauty of a book, a handcrafted book with beautiful images, but also through where you house those books. So the Freedom Library is looks like this. It's curved
Ooh, yeah.
and it's about 44 inches high. And if you can see, like you can access the books on each side.
Both
So this
sides,
is
yeah.
like an 8th scale model. So real size, 6 or 7 people could stand around it, all looking at books, and it creates conversation. And the wood is hard, it's maple, oak, cherry, walnut, and it's just beautiful in a world in and of itself.
Oh,
And this went from an idea in 2020 that was funded with a $5 million grant from the Mellon Foundation to now we got our own headquarters. We produce, fabricate, build the libraries here in Connecticut. We have a team of about 20 people, and we are shipping the libraries all across the country and, bringing joy into the lives of people in prison. And when we bring them inside, we bring them on the cell block so that, if you live in a dormitory, when you roll off your bunk, you can see the Freedom Library. If you live in a cell block with cells, when you walk out of the cell door, you can see your Freedom Library. And we build one for the staff too, because we think about who should have access to joy, and it's everybody. And we think about joy in literature as that, freedom begins with a book, and that's freedom for everybody.
Reginald, for those not familiar, how does this compare to what typically would be the access or lack of access to reading material in prison?
So first, our books are brand new, and that means that because it's a river, you can't step in the same place twice, but it's still the same river. And so what we do is we give you these brand new books from a specially curated collection that we curated. So it's the same books more or less every time. But also, you got a library in a prison if you have one. A lot of prisons don't have a library because of budget cuts. But even if you have one, 800 people at the prison. The library is open, even if it's open on a regular basis, from 9 to 3. But you work from 9 to 3. They also have exercise from 9 to 3. They might have visits from 9 to 3. You might be in school. You're in school from 9 to 3. Programs are from 9 to 3. When are you going to make it to the library? And when you get there, you got 20 minutes. So even though I went to the library, I used to get jobs to make sure I had access to the library. And I was at a bunch of prisons that had no libraries, but some of them did, right? Even when I went to the library, I got like 20 minutes. I'm hanging out in 811. See, only nerds know what 811 is, right? 811 is taking it back to the Dewey Decimal System. That's the poetry section. But my time in the library was so short that I couldn't waste it trying to explore something else. So I read Shakespeare for the first time as a student at the University of Maryland under the tutelage of Professor Sandy Mack, and he was brilliant. But I wish that I would have had some good sense about Shakespeare when I was in the classroom. We put it in the Freedom Library, put it right on your cell block. You got access to it before you get to the classroom.
Now, did I read somewhere on your website about some underground library model or mechanism that you and some others created when you were inside?
Oh, you did your research.
Oh, yeah. What's that all about?
I like that because now you're telling me. First, I got to tell people, go to the website. It's freedomreads.org. And look, it's this great story though, right? Because it's called, so first, when you go to solitary confinement, you can't have any books. They take your stuff from you. And so I'm 16, 17 years old. And I hear somebody call out, "Hey, yo, send me a book." And I'm like, nah, I'm tripping, And then I hear, "What sale?" And then you hear the book.
No.
So I go to my son, I'm like, "Hey, yo, send me a book." They like, "Young blood, what sale?" I tell them, they slide Dudley Randall's The Black Poets under my cell door. And at this moment, I'm discovering, Lucille Clifton. I'm discovering Sonia Sanchez. I'm discovering Robert Hayden. I'm discovering like Sterling Brown and so many of these writers who really changed the way I think about the world. I remember Lucille Clifton had a line in this poem called Greens. It said, I sensed it was like under the black blade of the knife, as it makes the greens curl black. I sense the bond of lime things everywhere. And this is beautiful, right? But then I also learned about Etheridge Knight, who was a poet who was in prison. And I was like, well, hold up. He's writing these poems. He did time in prison. I'm gonna be a poet. And so in some ways, the Freedom Library is an extension of that. It's this idea about what is possible for people if they have conduits to those mind sparking moments of imagination and inspiration, right? And so the Freedom Library is meant to get that to everybody in a way that it changed my life. I believe it might change theirs.
All right. Who should have access to joy, right? Okay. So let's get some ice cream. Go
Oh,
ahead,
yes. And
step
look,
aside and get it. I'm going to grab mine.
I'm
And
going to my ice cream.
all right, I'm going to remind everybody about our ice cream sponsor, Taharka Brothers, spelled Taharka, taharkabrothers.com, based in Maryland, an employee-owned social enterprise ice cream company. They are 15 years old. They've been working with the PlayFull Podcast for 2 years. Among other things, they are the vendor of ice cream at the Baltimore Ravens Stadium. They have had a bunch of success, and rightfully so. If you taste this ice cream, you will, it is not just, I mean, ice cream's good, right? Just all ice cream, but this is exceptional ice cream, fantastic. They ship nationwide. Reginald, tell us what it looks like when the ice cream shows up.
Oh, man, it is beautiful. First, I got to tell you, and I thought that I was not going to talk about my girlfriend on this podcast, but now I have to. I mean, I'm like duty bound to. Um, One, I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. I see this weird box in the hallway, and I'm thinking this ain't ours. So I'm about to put it back in the hallway because I don't like when people just put stuff in my apartment as if it belongs to me, right? And then so as I'm picking it up, and then I'm like, did my son order something else? Because the box don't feel cold. And so I look and it's got my name on it. I'm like, wait a minute. Wow, did I get a gift? You know what I mean? And now I've done changed my whole body. Now I'm feeling delight. I'm feeling this process, right? And I open it up and I'm like, what is in this box? And now I'm ripping it. It had dry ice in it to keep it cold. And I had recently asked somebody for dry ice when I was at some restaurant. And so I had been thinking about dry ice and I was like, what? I opened it up. It was like 5 containers. And this is the thing about ice cream. It's tempting, but ice cream is usually mediocre. And so first of all, if it's coming across the country, I thought it was going to be melted. It was already frozen. It was so frozen that I put most of it in the freezer and I opened one of it up and I could eat it as if it just came out of my freezer. I hadn't even liked ice cream. I don't even eat ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant. I ate, I'm not even gonna talk about how much I ate that night, but it was like cookie dough flavored. And it's just a graham cracker flavor. It's a graham cracker flavor that I'm from PG County, Maryland. And so what I felt like was I was feeling home when I was eating it. This is the thing that was in my mind. I was like, man, this feels like something that I had at home. And it turns out I did, because there's a Baltimore company that is at the Baltimore Ravens Stadium.
Oh my God. Reginald, you and I have had, I'm going to grab my ice cream here out of my bag with my little bit of ice I put in. You and I have had since we had our prep call, and ever since, and today again, we keep having all these, like you said, like as if we'd planned it kind of moments, which is just kind of neat to know that that we are in flow. We are absolutely in flow. Which flavor did you choose to share with to eat today while we're on the podcast?
Roasted strawberry.
Oh yeah. Is that one dairy free?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, they've got 4 or 5 dairy-free flavors, and they're not like the poor cousin to the other ones. They're just as delicious. All right, I'm having caramel crunch. It is
Ooh.
salted caramel ice cream with chocolate covered honeycomb toffee. Now, and it's actually, I'm in California. It's 1:30 in the afternoon, which is great because sometimes I'm eating this at like 7 a.m., which is also fine, but how is it?
Yo, see, this is a problem. I'm gonna have to go do some push-ups. Oh man.
So, when we're eating ice cream, I often ask my guests, what's the scoop on how you came to care? And you've shared a bunch of wonderful stories. Do you have, a lot of people go through hard stuff and, they work on, their own part of getting better and feeling better and recovering from whatever trials they've had. Some people do all that and think about how they can help others. What is it about you, and where did you learn that? Or do you think that was just, kind of in your DNA to look up beyond yourself and say, how can I help other people?
Mm, good ice cream.
Mm.
I went to prison. I went to prison when I was 16. And I mean, in some ways, it was a confluence of a lot of things that was going on at the time that created some of the ways that I think about the world now. First, I thought I was vulnerable in the world. And I thought that it's not necessarily that I was trying to fit in, but wasn't making the kind of choices, man. I didn't want to live in a bifurcated world where the people around me, I expected to go to prison, and then I expected to go to college with my classmates. Um, and yet I didn't believe I could live or I could integrate those two worlds without, like, I didn't believe I could be my one person and integrate those two worlds, if that makes sense. And it was exhausting, I think. And I ended up robbing somebody and going to prison. And but I knew I couldn't even fight when I went to prison. And so I thought I was vulnerable in the world, and now I'm in prison and I know I'm vulnerable. And I was wondering what it was that was keeping me from actually connecting well with either one of these two worlds that I was trying to live in as a teenager, the world of like the talented and gifted or whatever, and the world of the dudes in my neighborhood. And people might have said, Dwayne, you were fine. What are you talking about? And it might all be in my head because that's how it goes sometimes, right? But one thing did change, and it was like, having been beat up a lot. And it was like, why am I always getting in fights with people though? And I was really good at talking bad about people. We called it Joning. I was really good. Like I could say something about you and it'd like make you cry, or make you want to punch me in the face. And that's not good for not wanting to be punched in the face. You know what I mean? Or like I would say things in the class. I mean, she'd be like, why would you say that? What? I mean, just leave. My girlfriend, we went to middle school together. So she remembered me. She'd be like, yo, you was kind of disruptive.
So you're telling me I want to explore with you a little bit about these, like the origin story of your worldview, right? And your
Oh, I got you.
compassion.
No, that's what I was. That's what I
Yeah.
was. And so so what happens is, right? And look, I'm a kid. I'm always getting in trouble, and I'm always getting beat up. I don't understand why, but now I'm in prison. And if I thought I was vulnerable before, now I know I'm vulnerable. I realize I'm not better than anybody around me. And like maybe part of me thought I was because I thought I was smart. I thought they would end up in prison and I wasn't. And now I'm already in prison or I'm headed to prison and I'm guilty. I can't act like, I mean, it wasn't poverty, it wasn't racism. It was just me. And so I'm down, but I'm trying to be like, what does it mean for me? And I didn't have a mechanism to care about other people at that time. But somebody told me if I go to get a GED, I might get time off my sentence. So I go to the GED class, and I mean, and I was a smart aleck, and that's why I mentioned my girlfriend actually, who did the cover, Can did the cover of the book. But I mentioned her earlier because she went to middle school with me, and she reminded me sometimes that I was disruptive. And all of the trouble I got into was always with how I talked to people. It was never being like violent or aggressive. It was talking at the wrong times, talking too much, talking too loudly, talking too often, talking too fast. You know. Um, but anyway, I go to this spot. I'm in a class. I'm so small that the small jail uniform don't fit on me. And after the class, I'm talking to the teacher. I'm like, yeah, I want to get a GED. And she looks at me and she's like, what classes were you taking in high school? Were you going to school? It's like, yeah. I was like, I was in French 4. I was in AP US history. I was in discrete math. And she was like, wait a minute, what school did you go to? And I told her. And then so she checked my grades and I ended up getting my high school diploma at the end of the 11th grade school year while I was in jail. But a condition of it was that I would be a GED tutor. And I'm 16. I'm like, how am I gonna be a GED tutor? These people are grown. And she was like, yeah, I know. But sometimes you have a gift that you're supposed to share with other people. And that's what led me to pay attention to other people. And in some real radical way, I think I already was connecting myself to this notion that I wasn't better than anybody else. But now I had a way to think about myself in the world that I never would have thought of myself as, which is like as an educator, as a teacher. And I carried that through all of my work. As somebody who uses my stories to try to uplift and say something that matters versus somebody who uses my stories to try to cut people down. And that has been the most profound, I think, shift in my world perspective, but also in my ability to access joy through living in community with people, which is what you have to do as a poet.
It reminds me of what you said at the very beginning when I was talking about that juxtaposition of poet and lawyer, and you said, you found the case to be that it's in either case, it's the use of words, right? The use of, the right words in the right order to accomplish whatever it is you set out to accomplish. And, you had experience and are reflecting and sharing with us that there was a time when you put certain words together and they could be biting and they could be caustic and they could be, they could create harm. And it was still just words, right? So what a
It really
beautiful,
was just words. I said
yeah,
that sometimes. I was like, yo, it was just words. You know, it ain't my fault that you can't beat me in basketball if I had no eyes and no legs and I didn't even use a basketball and just breathed. Hey, yo, that was funny though, right?
yeah,
That would get me beat up though.
yeah.
They'd be like, you still talking? I'd be like, listen.
I get it. So if you would you indulge a question that I didn't ask Cecilia, my other MacArthur Fellow friend, and I want to ask you, what happens when you find out that you got a MacArthur Genius Grant? Where were you? Who called? It's a surprise, right?
I really wish that I would have had some Taharka ice cream in my freezer because what would have happened is I would have went to my freezer, I would have got me a pint, and I would have just went in on the whole pint. This is the kind of thing that you feel like is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You will suffer. You know what? I got to tell you something. When I started eating, right, I was like, I think I'm eating too much. And then I checked. I was like, hold up, wait. 200 calories a serving. It's only 3 servings in this whole container. Oh man, I can eat this whole container,
You
act like it's
can.
just a meal. I'm telling you.
This is
But
so
look,
good. I have that thing happen
look,
when we're on the podcast. All of a sudden, my spoon hits the bottom of the carton. I'm like, oh, damn, I went all the
look.
way.
But you asked me what happens when you win.
Yeah.
This is the thing. As an artist, I lived most of my life trying, and as a person went to prison for a crime of violence. So first, I went to prison so young for a crime of violence, and I should have said this before, and I want to make clear, this is the first impetus. I had to call my mother and tell her I was guilty of putting a pistol in somebody's face. And I had to do that before I went in front of any judge or I met with any lawyer. And that meant that I had to recognize why that was devastating to my mom. It was one, that I would have the temerity to do it. And two, that in doing it, I had hurt somebody else. And we came from a community where violence was there. And so she knew that I knew better. And so from that very moment, I have to think about what it means to be a different human being in the world. And what does it mean to make amends for that act of violence? And I think sometimes because that's so ingrained in how I live the world now, I don't say that as the moment of caring about others. Because in that is the real caring about others, right? But when I was thinking about the dudes around me, it was recognizing that I was seeing them in me. And it was this real need to figure out how I could care about them because that would allow me to care about me. And it would make the other part much, much easier. It's because then I could see myself in the larger landscape of the world.
Man, I mean, maybe just to state the obvious, but this, a minute ago, we just said it's all words. That's what we're having right now. You and I are talking and we're sharing words and you're making me feel a lot of things. As you,
I hope it's joy.
it is. It's joy, it's inspiration, it's camaraderie, it's hope. It's all that. And
It's cool because like it's just one of those things I'm afraid of. I'm creating all of these things because of where I was positioned and situated in the world. But one of the things I also created things because I felt like the way that I was positioned and situated in the world was pushing me to tell a singular story. And
mm,
so when I turned my book Felon into a solo show, one of the things that was driving me is that I would be like, yo, my book, I mean, it's serious, but it's more than that. I mean, I'm like more than the dour guy, you know? And as I started to feel more, and this pushed me to start feeling more joy in my life. It was a woman named Ann Rice, man. I was at West Virginia at a conference, and they didn't have the traditional setup. And so everybody was kind of sitting around me. And they was like, well, yeah, this is how you want to do your reading. And I was like, what do you mean this is how I'm gonna do my reading? And I was like, bet. And I just took the book and I was, and it forces me to like spin around and gesture to different people. And I was already funny, but now I think I was more deliberately trying to make jokes because I was also trying to compensate for the space. And I felt like I was in conversation with all of these people. And she said, you are really funny, yo. You would be great on stage. And I think I just let that sit in my head. And years later, I'm like, how can I make my public space feel less dour? Even if I'm writing a book like Felon, and I was like, I'm gonna turn it into a solo show. And that's how I end up doing a solo theater piece that I think allows me to integrate. We were talking earlier about integration. I think artistically, that was the first time that I was able to really robustly integrate all of these aspects of my life, because you have a kind of social commentary within it. You have me talking about violence, me talking about struggling for forgiveness. You have me talking about alcoholism in the joint, to go back to Bill's story, right? But also you have me talking about books and literature in this moment that literature changed my life. And you have me subtly talking about Freedom Reads. When you go to the show, you see the Freedom Library on the stage. And I'm like, if only I had something like this in prison. And then it's like, it's this meta conversation between me and the audience about the fact that I am putting something like that in prison. So anyway, I think I found a way to integrate the thing, and I feel real good about it these days.
Ooh, love it. Okay. That is a few, I mean, I know.
In the button on that, I'm sorry, in the button
Yes,
on
ma'am.
that is that that's what the MacArthur gives you, though. Because as an artist, most of the time what you're doing is struggling from step to step to step to step, hoping that this is actually possible. And what the MacArthur did was gave me like to really jump off, to believe that I can have a different trajectory with my life, and I could like fully integrate it in ways that was like thoughtful, meaningful, and I even just had an opportunity to risk a little bit more.
Mm,
Security, knowing that in doing that risk, I wasn't gonna be like, unemployed next week.
yeah. Wow. Okay, so can we wrap up with and I know you and I we're gonna speak together again. We're gonna be together in person. I'm just gonna guarantee that's gonna happen. To wrap this up, can you give us a call to action? I'd love, where can people get the book, and how can people support Freedom Reads? Anything else you want to tell us? A little more ice cream. Me too.
I'm not sure if you have guests return.
I
You
do.
want me to return? I'm happy to come.
I love it.
I don't want to make it seem like it's just for the ice cream, but but call to action. You could get dog room essentially wherever books are sold, but it'd be great if you could pick up the book. Um, and if you pick up the book, share a poem with it with somebody.
Mm,
In fact, you can find a poem online now. Take the time and read a poem. I read a poem to somebody the other day. They told me that they had a death in the family, and they went to a funeral. And I asked them if they would let me read them a poem. And I read it to her. And she, it was like tears coming out of her eyes. And she said, "Thank you." And one of the things about it is that it's some stakes, I think, in this book that's not in other books I wrote. And they let you touch on something that's meaningful and that matters. And so, one call to action would be, I just ask you to invite yourself to try it and see if it matters. And then I would say, check out Freedom Reads, freedomreads.org. We build libraries. We employ people who did time in prison. We employ people who did time in Yale. And they work together, and we do this amazing thing. And it's end of the year. A lot of us are thinking about what organizations we want to support.
yeah.
Our goal, our organization's mission is to bring joy into the lives of people in prison. And we understand that joy touches everybody. I remember one moment, S.A. Cosby, his book had just come out or something, and we were in a Virginia prison, and one of his books was on a bookcase, and this dude got all excited. I know this dude. Well, my mom know this dude. My mom worked at Lowe's with this dude, man. And my mom read this book when it was in draft form. That moment was just so joyous. And so support Freedom Reads, because we are, I feel like we one of the manifestations, like the podcast, your work, your life, my life. Freedom Reads is all a manifestation of this idea that, joy is the catalyst for the serious work that we need to have happen in the world.
Right on, right on. I really believe we're operating in a specific new currency right now, right? This
Yeah.
currency of joy, right? It is buoying us. And I am so glad to know you. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I'm going to be forever. I'll remember this, and I'm also going to keep coming back to you and your work, and happy to support. Thanks so much, Reginald.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, Kristine.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the PlayFull Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know of a leader or organization that's doing good in the world and you'd love to help us help them amplify their message, I would love to have them on the show. Go to the show notes and click there, or go to impactfulinc.com/contact. And that's impactful with 2 L's, inc.com/contact. And let us know who you're thinking about. Can't wait to see you next time. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the PlayFull Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know of a leader or organization that's doing good in the world and you'd love to help us help them amplify their message, I would love to have them on the show. Go to the show notes and click there, or go to impactfulinc.com/contact. And that's impactful with 2 L's, inc.com/contact. And let us know who you're thinking about. Can't wait to see you next time.